So I woke up and saw this. Superheroes Bulma makes GT's Shadow Dragons the perfect next villains after Dragon Ball Super Superhero. I'm assuming at this point, the Dragon Ball Super Superhero arc that we're seeing, this could be the potential next arc. And of course, this is coming from Screen Rant, which is just in the same boat as CBR when it comes to making these Dragon Ball takes and these Dragon Ball articles, but I saw a glimmer of interesting discussion going on here, so I want to read what it says. Going off of Bulma's actions in Dragon Ball Super Superhero, Dragon Ball GT Shadow Dragons are the perfect next villain for the franchise. Thanks to Dragon Ball Super Broly, it is clear that non-canon characters can be made such if there's a place for them within the current story. That hasn't happen a second time, but recently events in the franchise would make the Shadow Dragons more than appropriate. The Shadow Dragons were the final villain of Dragon Ball GT, and before Dragon Ball Super officially made the series non-canon, the final villains of the entire Dragon Ball franchise. This is true. In Dragon Ball GT canon, the Dragon Balls accumulate negative energy every time they're used that would normally fade away over time, but thanks to Goku and his friends using them so much, the negative energy kept building up until it created the evil Shadow Dragons. The Shadow Dragons' existence served as a commentary on the characters being over-reliant on the Dragon Balls, and since GT was the original conclusion to the franchise, villains like them were more than fitting as the final antagonists. Personally, I love the Shadow Dragons, but when I say that, I like these two. And then this one. That's basically it. The other ones I kind of skip past those episodes to get to the one where Goku is running laps around with Ice and Nova Shenron. I think those are some of the coolest fights in all of Dragon Ball GT, but I mean everything else I kind of skip right over all the way up until like the very ending. And it is appropriate, it makes sense. I mean right now in Dragon Ball they've used these Dragon Balls so often, and not even just these. I mean in the last arc on its own we got two characters that basically wished to be the strongest in the universe. Like, what? Exactly, this is an abuse of the Dragon Balls. The biggest benefit to the Shadow Dragons making their way into Dragon Ball Super is that it would take an opportunity for the shortcomings of the Shadow Dragon saga to be fixed. While the general concept of the Shadow Dragon saga was good, the execution of it ended up falling flat because of how lackluster the majority of the Shadow Dragons were, which I just stated. Of the 7 Shadow Dragons, Sin Shenron, voiced by Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood's Hidekatsu Shibata, Nova Shenron, and Ice Shenron were the only ones who could put up a decent fight against Goku, and all 7 of them were given very little in the way of personality. While most of them had cool powers and designs, it still made them very underwhelming, especially when they were initially the final villains of the franchise. Exactly, just like I stated, Ice, Nova, and Omega or Sin, those are the ones. Those are the best ones. If Dragon Ball Super did have its own Shadow Dragon saga, however, then it could serve to fix those problems. The Shadow Dragons could be more strong enough to at least hold their own against Goku, and more importantly, they could all have their own personalities fleshed out to be more than generic villains wanting to destroy the world. Not unlike how Dragon Ball Super Broly did a lot to flesh out the Broly's controversial character, which it absolutely did. It made him better. Fleshing them out in such a cool way would even tie into the various ways that Super expanded on the lore of the Dragon Balls, such as the existence of the Super Dragon Balls and establishing how planets other than Earth and Namek have their own Dragon Balls. Whatever in the case, it could be a long way toward making them far more engaging villains than they originally were. This is where we get to the core of the difference between Dragon Ball GT and Dragon Ball Super, because in Dragon Ball GT, yes, there were multiple sets of Dragon Balls, but really the main villains came from the one set of Dragon Balls being overused. But in Dragon Ball Super, we have multiple sets of Dragon Balls, and there are other Dragon Balls we don't even know of, and the Super Dragon Balls, of course. So really, honestly, I really don't think this Screen Rant article is bad at all. I think this is actually a good way to push into the next arc and make it really interesting. The only thing that I would change is I would change Bulma being the bad guy. I don't think that's exactly what they're focusing on, but that's what the title says. So Bulma does make selfish wishes, but if you remember, Frieza was trying to make a selfish wish at first too. He was trying to grow a little bit taller. I think that if you're going to start a new arc, we should have not only other people wishing on their various sets of Dragon Balls in very frivolous ways, even the Namekians could be doing this, but at the same time we should have somebody actually, like say a God of Destruction, get the Super Dragon Balls and make a wish on them that is also frivolous, meaning that all the Dragon Balls in existence shatter, and that would make different dragons across the multiverse, across all the universes. And I would love to see Ice and Nova and Sin. I have a huge love for them, and I want to see their designs or something similar to them come back, like them being family or whatever the case is. But we could also develop new designs, new Dragon Balls, a swole Dragon Ball character that's super strong, have them all be on the level of Goku and Vegeta. That would be really, really cool and be an interesting way to have a new arc that is so focused on Dragon Balls in the first place. Like, this would be such a great continuation for Dragon Ball Super to have a arc that is like Dragon Balls. We're already going into the future where Dragon Ball GT would, the events from that show would eventually be. So taking these ideas and putting them into Dragon Ball Super, taking the GT ones, it would be so interesting to have that and have our heroes fighting against these dragons who are trying to do their own thing or running amok or whatever the case is. And once they destroy them, they go back to their original set of Dragon Balls. I also think that the dragons should have like a power each one has that is unique, and then also a wishing power that maybe is like on a cooldown timer where they can make and grant wishes or have power of manifestation. The original dragons did not have that power, and I feel like that's kind of a waste because the whole point of the Dragon Balls is to make wishes. Having a wishing power would be really cool for each dragon. But let me know in the comments below what you guys think of this possibility for the next arc of Dragon Ball Super.
Subscribe for more content. Or perish.